think, I mean, obviously we see it kind of frontline, that you get so many requests in the classroom for the same content that it's almost wasteful to upgrade your bandwidth just for the peaks in demand. So the more that you can serve locally, whilst reassuring you that it's still up-to-date content, obviously that's kind of more efficient.
Yeah, and especially at the elementary level, when I brought the K-5 classes online, all of that stuff is repetitive. Those kids are all being guided through the project, and so they're all doing exactly the same thing in the classroom. And so, that frees up that bandwidth for the teacher who is zooming out to the student that's home. That keeps that connection up, while those kids, I've got 20 kids sitting in the classroom, all going to the same site, following along with the teacher. They're not consuming, all that bandwidth and taking the teacher's Zoom off. So that works really well for us. Makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. So how frequently have you had to upgrade your bandwidth in the last, say, 5 years? I mean, obviously you've brought in a lot more devices in more recent times.
0. I have not upgraded in 5 years.
Wow.
This was a decision we made at the time, looking at the cost. We were going to go up to 500 meg 5 years ago. And I compared that to caching system, and the initial cost first year was pretty much a wash. But over the years, I figured, well, if we can do this and not upgrade, we'll save money. And so that was kind of the deal we made. And if I got above 80% of my capacity, I was going to upgrade. And we've been floating this year about 70, 75 capacity. Wow. So we're still there. This next E-rate cycle, we're going to bring it up to 500 and update our CACHEBOX also, just because, I want to be forward thinking and look down the road, and there's definitely going to be more bandwidth demands as we go forward. But I'm pretty happy that, we've saved quite a bit of money over that period of time for not upgrading.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you avoid those bandwidth upgrades that are a monthly cost, obviously that's going to help. Okay. So in terms of, I mean, you said that you guys are, you've been able to stay at your current connection for quite a while. How would you, so it's kind of a 3-part question, really. So how do you describe your school's connectivity right now, compared to the pre-pandemic connectivity, and then compared to when you first started? Because obviously your needs have changed, but how has the state of connectivity changed in that time as well for you guys?
Okay, well, I'll start way back. Like I said, when we started, we were running 2 T1 lines. So we were lucky to get email. At that point in time, connectivity to the outside world was simply transferring data. We did the exchange of files, and we did email. Obviously no video, anything like that. And then pre-pandemic, we were consuming a little over 50% of our bandwidth, and doing basically what we do now, but on a much smaller scale. We had some teachers doing online education. We had some teachers doing video and stuff. And then when we spun up with the pandemic and we added a bunch of these new products online, like I said, I could have seen a huge spike in our bandwidth if it wasn't for the fact that we're caching it. So those repetitive calls are getting reduced. And so we've gone up 15, maybe 20%. I can't remember from the last report I looked at. But we didn't, looking at it, we should have gone up multiple 4 or 5 fold, and we didn't. So that's really saved us. And like I said, looking at surrounding school districts where I'm talking to guys when I go to my meetings, when I'm consulting, I'm talking to guys that are adding, in the last 2 years, have added 2, 3, 1 gig lines for districts that aren't much bigger than us. And I look at the price of what they're paying and think,
That's crazy. And is it just a knowledge visibility kind of thing, or is it just you stick with what like bandwidth upgrades were kind of something that we saw as 5 years ago or something? People would just reactively upgrade their bandwidth as and when they needed it, but now demand is growing so rapidly that people need something more than just bandwidth. They need a bandwidth management strategy in place, essentially.
In my consulting, I've talked to them about this. Obviously, we all go back well, most of our districts all go back to the same pipe, the ITC that we send all of our fiber back to. And so if you're wasting bandwidth down the road, you're wasting my bandwidth downstream.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this multiple times. And the biggest thing is it's what you're comfortable with, right? It's what you've always done in the past. And so these guys have always basically looked at, you know, the only option was to upgrade bandwidth, and upgrading bandwidth is a sure thing. I'm adding this number. I need this much. I add this much to it. I now have this much. Where caching is something that is a little bit mysterious to some people, I think. And it is hard to predict what gain you're going to get coming into it. You can run some numbers and get a guess, but to actually predict, okay, I'm going to get this much gain, so this is all the bandwidth I'm going to need. It's hard to do. And I've talked to a couple of districts who have jumped in and added a box in, and they're still tweaking them, trying to figure out what they're doing. And then I've also talked to our ITC about the idea of, hey, can we look at maybe doing this with all of our member districts? Just because, like I said, if guy down the street is buying a bunch of bandwidth and sucking it all up downstream, he's slowing me down. And I can't control that. So we've talked about that, but it's really much more about the understanding of hey, this will work. And I guess when it's your butt on the line and your superintendent saying, hey, why is our internet freezing every day? We're at 100% capacity. You know, it's easier to say, okay, we're at 100%. I'm going to double it. And so we've got more space than to say, I'm going to buy this box and put it in and we're going to drop our percentage. That's a little harder to explain to people. So,
no, it makes sense. And, it is a kind of safe kind of go-to, I think, that people see as upgrading bandwidth. But yeah, as you say, kind of innovative tech directors like yourself, are going to look for alternative ways of maximizing their capacity rather than just relying on reactively upgrading your bandwidth, which ultimately, we've talked before about the more you have, the more you use. So you upgrade, everybody uses the internet more, it's fast for about 6 months, and then all of a sudden you're congested again. You're seeing big spikes in demand from bandwidth, from sort of device updates and YouTube and various other traffic. So
if you have more, you use more. It's just like money.
Exactly. we can all relate to that one.
Yeah. So